and welcome to episode 2 of My Doll's House Diary. So as you can see, I've removed the main doors of the house and I've put all of the screws into this little pot, which I'll keep with the house until I'm ready to put the doors back on. And it's really important when removing doors that you keep all screws and any fittings in a safe place, as it might be a while before you need to come back to them again. So I mentioned in episode 1 in the introduction that I would probably begin with the living room, which is this room here, as I've got a definite idea of what I want to do in here. So for the whole house, I want to create sort of typical country English house look, maybe a bit of Laura Ashley, a bit of French elegance as well. And the story of the house is that it's going to be my miniature self's country retreat. So there'll be lots of personal details in there, photographs, copies of my favourite books, little bits of my favourite food, my favourite flowers, maybe little clues about hobbies that I enjoy. And I think that's really nice when you're creating a project, to put a few personal touches in, and whoever's looking at it will learn a little bit about the creator as well. So back to the living room, and I've put together a pin board, which I'm going to show you now, just to give you an idea of what I'm trying to achieve in here. So the main colour scheme for the room will be black and gold, and I'll be adding some cream to break that up. I'll have lots of black furniture, a couple of sideboards and some side tables, as well as a lovely large coffee table. I'll be making a gold or cream armchair and sofa with cushions. And there'll be lots of gold accessories, gold framed paintings and a mirror, picture frames and some ornamental pieces too. I'll also include a vase of flowers and a fruit bowl, and I'm sure I'll have lots more ideas as the room progresses. I'll be doing separate tutorials for all of the furniture and miniatures that I make to go inside. So if you want to create a room in the same style, you can, or you might just want to take one or two pieces to add to a project that you're already working on. So let's get started. So I'm going to begin in this room by painting the floor, and I've chosen Faro and Ball paint called Off Black. So it's not a really rich deep black, it's a matte, it's like a dark charcoal actually, and I'm a huge fan of these paints. They are quite expensive at £4.50 for a sample pot, but when you're using them for miniature work that really does go a long way. But of course you can just buy sample pots from your local DIY store, which will be less expensive. But I really like this one, it gives a really nice finish as well. And you can also send off for a free colour chart, and that's really handy to choose colours, but also if you want to match a colour maybe to an existing wallpaper or something. And for the woodwork in the room, I've chosen this called Faro's Cream. I really want to get rid of this sort of yellowing enamel that I used in here, and it's also got a gloss finish, and this is a nice matte finish, so that's going to look a lot nicer. So I'm going to begin by masking off the floor, and then I'll start painting. Okay, so I've got here a 25mm or 1-inch low tack masking tape, and I'm just going to use this to mask off the skirting board and the fireplace, basically all the edges around the room. On there, and if you've got a bit of a gap under the skirting board, you can just use your nail and push the tape underneath it. That way you know you won't get any sort of darker paint on the skirting board. Make sure you get into all the gaps. And the tape is as close to the floor as you can get it. Push that underneath there again. Okay, so I've applied masking tape all around the outside edge of the room, and I've also covered the bottom of the door here, as I want to do that in cream. And then I've just got here a sanding block and a piece of medium grade sandpaper, and I just want to very gently go over the whole floor, not to remove the varnish but just to take that top layer off. And that's just beginning to come away there, so I'll do that over the entire room. Now that's varnished, I'm just going to use a piece of kitchen towel just to get the worst of the dust out of there. Like that, and then just to make sure there's none left between the boards, I'm just going to use this soft brush. So I've given the paint a good shake. I've got a piece of kitchen towel down there in the kitchen just to make sure I don't spill anything in there. And I'm just beginning by using this smaller brush just to go around the outside edges. Okay, so now I've been all the way around the room, around the outside. I'm changed to a larger paintbrush, which I've actually chopped the end off because I couldn't fit it in the room, to finish off the central area. Okay, so that's the first coat of floor paint done. Now it's on, I'm not sure if it looks a bit more grey than black, so I'll wait until it's dried and then see what I think. But it doesn't matter if I don't like it, because I've got some black, and then I can just treat this as a first coat. But I will let it dry first because it might darken up a bit. And just bear in mind that when paint is drying in a confined area like this, it will take a little bit longer than normal. Okay, so the flooring's been left to dry for a couple of hours now, and it does look rather grey. So I'm going to do a second coat over the top in pitch black, and then we'll see how that looks. Okay, so there's the second coat in pitch black, and I think already that that's looking better. So it's just a question of leaving that to dry, and then we can remove the masking tape. But just to make sure that's completely dry, I'm going to leave that now overnight, and I'll see you again in the morning. Okay, so the floor has now been left for 24 hours, and I'm really pleased with the colour now, although I don't really like this matte finish. So I am going to add a coat of varnish, and I'm using this Rustin's quick dry varnish, which is a satin finish, so it won't be really glossy, but it will just give it a nice sheen. And when you're varnishing over dark paint, just dispense a little bit into a pot, otherwise you'll contaminate the varnish in the tin. So I've got some here. I've just put into a pot. And I'll obviously leave the masking tape in place and just go over with one coat of varnish. And it does add that sort of milky sheen at first, but as it dries, that disappears. So that's the coat of varnish done, and that's been drying now for half an hour, which is touch dry time. But again, I think I'm going to leave that overnight, and then I'll remove the masking tape. But I'm a lot happier with the satin finish than I was with the matte. Okay, so the varnish has now been drying overnight and I'm much happier now with the look of the floor. So I'm going to remove the masking tape, just very carefully. And I can already see there a little bit of mist, so I can go over that with the black and then again the varnish. There's something very satisfying about removing masking tape, I find. Yeah. So where I've pulled off paint around the edges, I'll touch that up and then go over with the varnish again and just remove these odd sections of masking tape that are sticking to the sides there. Okay, so I've removed all those awkward little bits of masking tape, and over on this side it did pull off more of the black paint on the floor, so I'll touch up the paint I think after I've painted this cream. And because I don't want to put more masking tape onto the floor and pull more paint off, I've done this template just using paper, and I've stuck lots of bits together to get into all the little nooks and crannies of the room, and that will just protect the floor now when I paint around the panelling. I'll just cut another bit there to go under the door. I'm going to do the door as well, just to lighten the room up a bit, and then I'll just start masking now around the top of the panelling. Okay, so I've masked off the entire room, all around the panelling and around the coving as well at the top. And I've also masked off onto the ceiling and around the window. So now I'm ready to paint. So that's the first coat of paint done on the panelling. Not a massive colour difference, although it has sort of toned down that horrible yellowy orange gloss. I think it looks so much brighter and fresher in there now. I just wanted to show you the door as well. That's one coat of emulsion on there. I think what I'm going to have to do is sand that back and then apply another couple of coats, sand again, and just keep applying until that dark mahogany varnish is covered. Now I've painted slightly over the brass fittings on there, but emulsion won't adhere to brass, so I can just sort of scratch that off at the end and then buff those up. And I just realised as well, looking in from this angle, that I haven't done anything with the light switch there, so I might just paint the surround, the wooden surround, in black as well. So I'm going to leave this now and let it completely dry, and again I'll pop back with you in the morning just to see how that's looking. So I left the paint to dry overnight, and this morning I'm really happy with the coverage, so I'm going to very carefully now remove the masking tape. Really don't want to tear any of this wallpaper. And the final piece. Now I used a fine grade sandpaper here on the door, just cut off a small section, and I've sanded off that first coat of paint. So I'm now going to apply a second coat. Okay, so I've just applied a second thin coat there, and once again when that's completely dry I'll sand that back and apply a third coat and just keep going until I've got a really nice coverage on there. So for the fireplace in the living room I want to create a sort of black on gold crackle effect. So I'm just going to have a practice before I actually apply it to the fireplace. So for the gold, I'm using this Rustin's quick dry gold paint. And when you're using anything like this, you need to stir it really well. The sediment sits at the bottom, and if you don't stir it, you'll just sort of get an orange paint. So you need to stir it really well to get the gold to come out. This is quick, sort of touch dry in 30 minutes and takes 2 hours to dry completely. But I did this sort of sample piece yesterday and left that to dry overnight, so that's now completely dry. And I've just dispensed some of my Faro and Ball pitch black paint onto this ceramic tile rather than keep dipping my sponge back into the pot. And as my sponge, I'm using, this is upholstery foam, and I've just torn a piece off of there. So I just want to dip it in the paint, not get too much on there. And this is normally an effect I use for kitchen worktops to create a sort of granite type effect. So I thought it might work on here, so let's have a go. I just want to sort of go on there quite lightly. And I want the gold to show through, but I want it to be predominantly black. Just pick up a little bit more paint. And it's always worth practicing a technique on a scrap of wood first. And it's also going to be quite tricky to work on the fireplace inside the room. So I just want to make sure that it's going to work before I actually do it. And as well, or when you're using this technique, always just apply a little bit, it's not too much there, but a little bit at a time, and you can add more. So it's better to do it a little at a time than, because you can't then take it off. That's a bit heavy over there, but I quite like how that's going there, and on the sort of shaped fireplace as well. I think that'll look quite nice. I've applied too much over this side. If you just sort of keep dotting, you can take some off. In fact, let's try get a dry piece of sponge, just go over and see how that works. Yeah, I quite like the look there as it's sort of drying off. So I'll try rubbing it, see what that does. No, that just takes it off too much. Yeah, so I think that'll work. So my next job is to mask off the fireplace surround and then give it a coat of gold paint. Okay, so I'm now going to paint the fireplace surround using the gold paint, and I've masked up around the fire. Now this side you obviously won't be able to see from looking into the doll's house, but I've masked it up anyway, and I've used this mirror to help me, and I'll use that as well when I'm painting that side, so I'll leave that propped there. And I've just dispensed some of the gold paint into this little pot, just so I don't knock the tin over as I'm working. I'm quite looking forward to doing this bit. I'm using a small brush here because there's lots of detail on this surround. So I'll need to sort of dot it in to all the nooks and crannies. there. It looks very opulent, doesn't it? So that will be dry, touch dry in half an hour, but I think it takes a couple of hours to dry completely, so I'm just going to leave that now before I come back with the black to create the crackle effect. I think that's going to look really nice. Okay, so the gold paint has now been drying for about 5 hours, and that is completely dry. So I've just dispensed a bit of the black paint here onto this tile, and I've got some sponge here. So I just want to take a tiny bit of paint, and I'm going to start around this side. Make sure you can see me there. And I'm just looking in the mirror there. And I'm only going to apply a little bit at a time, because it's better to have to put more on than, you know, take it off. It's really tricky getting in there. Bit more paint there. I'll start coming round this front bit now. So the idea was that I want it to look sort of predominantly black, but with the gold just showing through. That gold is such a nice colour. Okay, so that's one coat of black on, and I've already washed my hands before I put the camera back on, and I'm dirty again already. So it's a messy old job, and I was sponging the paint on really quite heavily. Now I don't know if you can actually see on the camera, but you can see the gold highlights. And what I've done is actually put the black paint on quite heavily, and then I'm just taking it off with a drier sponge. And when you're doing this, the mirror has really helped, but I found that I thought I'd finish, and then when I sort of look from a different angle, I could see lots of bare spaces. So do sort of move around as you're doing it and check that everything's covered. And actually I really like how that's looking. I didn't want to take off too much of the black, and just by using this sponge, as the paint has become tacky, it's just taking off the right amount. I'm really highlighting these nice shapes of the surround. Okay, so I've removed all of the masking tape and the paper, and I had quite a few areas to touch up, which I did with a really small paintbrush, and that was around all the skirting board as well, where the tape had pulled off some of the black paint, and that's the patches you can see in the floor there. But as soon as they're dry, I'll apply another coat of varnish. And then I've just got a spotlight here. I just wanted to shine that onto the fireplace so that you can actually see the gold there coming through. And over here, the door, that's now had 3 coats of paint, and I think another couple of coats should do it. So I've still got that to do. So a couple of small jobs still to be done, but I think I'll end this episode here. And then in the next episode I'll show you the completed room so far as the decoration is concerned. And then we'll start adding the furniture and accessories, the fun bit. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe, as next we'll begin adding the furniture and accessories, like I say, and I'll be doing separate tutorials for all of the items I make to go inside, which I hope you'll enjoy. And for now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.